A jury is deciding the fate of former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort. The fraud case is a big test for special counsel Robert Mueller, and CNN's Kara Scannell is outside the federal courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia. And Kara, you were just in the courtroom. This jury has questions. What questions did the jury have for the judge? Very interesting development.
It is, Jim. After almost 7 hours of deliberations, the jury knocked on the door. The court security officer went in, came out with a piece of paper, and it turns out the jury has 4 questions. One of them relates to the requirement to file notice that Manafort had foreign bank accounts. They asked very specific questions related to the elements of that charge. They also asked a question about what is required for Manafort on some of the tax charges he faces. They asked the judge also for a definition of reasonable doubt, and then another question, they wanted some help indexing the exhibits to the indictments. Now, the judge told the jury, he called them back in, he told them that they had to rely on their recollection for all of these counts, all these questions that they had. But he did tell them for reasonable doubt, he told them that it did not mean beyond possible doubt. So that was the only real affirmative instruction that the judge gave to the jury, and the jury notified the judge they were going to break today at 5:30, and they'll return tomorrow morning and pick up deliberations where they left off. But they're not getting any real additional information. The judges is telling them they need to rely on their memory, and they need to rely on the testimony of the witnesses and the documents that they have as exhibits, Jim.
Okay, CNN's Kara Scannell, very interesting development. Let's get more from our experts, and I want to turn to Joey Jackson first, because Joey Jackson, you've been in your share of courtrooms. When a jury sends a question to the judge and says, what does reasonable doubt means? To me, that says that this jury has its own doubts as to whether or not Paul Manafort is guilty. Correct me if I'm wrong here.
Though not necessarily. So what ends up happening is when a jury goes and deliberates, obviously they may have questions and concerns regarding the evidence, the testimony, and the legal standards that apply. Also, when jurors go back, sometimes it may be a single juror who needs clarification. It's not necessarily that they all do. But I think the asking of the question, which has been asked plenty in having a federal trial as I've had, or state trials as I've had, it's asked, what is the standard that we have to govern this? And generally speaking, a judge would be more helpful than this one apparently was, and will tell the jury, look, reasonable doubt is not a mathematical certainty. It's not a scientific certainty. It's not beyond every and all doubt, right? Is the evidence legally sufficient? And so before I think we jump to the conclusion that, hey, maybe the prosecution didn't prove its case, I think we're looking for a jury that's grappling with knowing what standard are we really governed by? What's the sufficiency of the evidence that we need to determine? And that goes to that issue, plain and simple. So I wouldn't read anything more. And as to the other charges, remember, Jim, they listened to 10 days of testimony, not including, the closing arguments and the jury instructions. And so they want clarification. They have these 18 charges and they want to know. There are certain elements. They want to match the facts to the elements so they can reach the right conclusion. This is a jury that's doing their job, and it doesn't seem like they're predisposed to any particular outcome. It seems like they're predisposed to getting to the heart of the matter. And that's all I read into it.
All right, Gloria Borger, Joey's right. We can't jump to any conclusions based on all of this. But if you're Paul Manafort's legal team, you must find that as something of a positive development.
Sure.
If you're grasping for positive developments, I suppose that's one.
I don't know what Joey would say to that because he's the real lawyer. But it would seem to me that Paul Manafort's team would be heartened by a jury asking this question, which is so basic to the case. But they're also taking their time. There are 18 counts. They're not getting it done today. This is a judge, as we know, who wants to move things along. But the jury seems to be saying, we're going to take our time and we're going to kind of look at everything as we have to. But it is a question that if I were on the special counsel side of this, if I were on, I would be scratching my head saying, I thought we kind of talked about that during the case, right, Joey? I mean, wouldn't you be just a little concerned?
Now, that is true. That is very true.
But, Joey, but people are convicted after this question. I've covered lots of trials. The jury will ask this question, and they'll still convict the person. Sometimes it's just one of those pro forma things that are sorted out at the beginning of a jury's deliberations in all of this.
Absolutely. That's 100% correct.